Welcome to another episode of Altitude Advantage. I'm your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across the table, we have our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla, and we are celebrating Dub Day here in the podcast studio. I know you're hyped. You're over there with your Microsoft Surface, typing away, getting ready to break down all the madness that happened in the fourth quarter on Sunday when the Broncos improved to 5-2, defeating the New York Giants 33-32. We're going to break down with initial reactions, some fourth quarter talk, Dre Greenlaw's return, and what this means in the grand scheme of things. But I know, I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but I know that 24 hours later, you like to digest it. I know when we had the instant analysis on the field, which if you haven't watched it, make sure you guys check it out on DenverBroncos.com and YouTube. You said only 2 hours have passed from the game, and I still am trying to gather what I just witnessed, what I just watched. So many things, so many stats, so many records. I went back to look at the win probability graphic because I like looking at those, and it was just like up, down, and then bam, game over. So tossing it over to you, what are your just initial thoughts after this one? I mean, we really, truly witnessed something very special on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that, as we said after the game, it did feel special in the moments. And I think when you look back at it, you realize just how improbable this win was. I think in the stadium, as we said, it felt emotional with all and you've got your DT jersey on.
I do.
You heard guys say, whether it was Will Lutz saying we're playing for more than just ourselves, or Garrett Bowles, who said he felt like DT was there. And DJ Jones did a similar tweet. Aqib Talib mentioned 33 points in the fourth quarter, which is how old Demaryius was when he passed away. So I think there was that element to it. But from a football standpoint, I think it was just the more you go back and look at it, the more you realize how special and impressive of a performance it was in the fourth quarter. And we'll get to kind of the first three quarters because I know head coach Sean Payton, that's something he's really emphasizing already, is that they got to be better early in games, and you can't count on this sort of thing to happen week in and week out. But what they did do was really impressive. 4 consecutive touchdown drives. You have to go back to 2014 to find the last time the Broncos scored touchdowns on 4 consecutive possessions. They snapped, like we said, they set records for points scored in the fourth quarter as a franchise record. It was the most points in the fourth quarter by any team that was shut out through 3 quarters. Second most points in a fourth quarter all time. The most points the Giants have allowed in a fourth quarter in franchise history. Oof. And the Broncos, and here's where I think, and we'll get to kind of the big picture of what it means, but this is where there's something to this, of like this team doesn't quit. And 3 consecutive fourth quarter comebacks for this team. I believe Bo Nix is tied for the most fourth quarter comebacks of any quarterback since the start of last season. So there's something to Bo. There's something to this group that even when it doesn't look good, they're not out of it. And there's something to that, I think, because so many teams, if you're having an off day, it's just kind of over. And this year, especially, we've seen for the Broncos, that has not been the case. And I think I said it last night, but you don't want to make these comparisons at this point, but that Super Bowl 50 team, 9 one-score wins. And I think people forget that wasn't always pretty, and you go on the road to Cleveland that year and you need a big play late to win that game, or I can think of you need a fumble recovery against the Chiefs to put that one away. And so there were all sorts of games like that, and obviously a long way to go for the Broncos, but I think this showed the fight, the personality of this team, and man, in the fourth quarter they were really good.
That fourth quarter is also special because if you go back and look at the play sheet, I believe on that game-winning drive when Bo Nix hits Marvin Mims for that 29-yard catch to really spark that drive, that happened at 33 seconds on the clock. And I think like something about the Mile High Magic moment, I talked to Marvin Mims after the game, and he said, he's like, you said it right. It is Mile High Magic, and it's something that he's like, you're in the moment, you're trying to make plays, and then you just notice that everything is clicking for you. And to show how rare this win is, the Broncos have had 2 wins this season after trailing 14-plus points in the fourth quarter. The rest of the league has just 2 combined. They're only the 4th team in the last 20 years to pull that off. And entering Week 7, teams had lost 1,601 straight games, down 18-plus points in the final 6 minutes, and the Broncos just snapped that streak. So whether you believe in the Mile High Magic or just the specialness or the importance of it. I mean, obviously the halftime honoring of Demaryius Thomas was very special. When the guys are coming out of the locker room, Emmanuel Sanders was there dapping up everyone, telling them to keep their head up, keep going. You're playing for something bigger. And I felt like a lot of the guys felt that way. Garrett Bowles spoke about that as well. That fourth quarter, when you just look at it, I think it's a testament to what we've talked about over the last few weeks of finishing games, right? And they've preached this season about starting fast, but then we've also broken down about the need to finish strong too. And they were able to do that. And they were able to do that the last few games of it doesn't always start right, doesn't always start pretty, but they're able to close out games. And that's something that I feel they learned from the 2 losses they had early on against the Colts and the Chargers.
Yeah, I thought that there are 2 things that really stood out to me. One is that we talked about needing to force a takeaway, needing to get a turnover, and this defense needing to do that. And as Mike McGlinchey said after the game, you don't win this game if Justin Strnad doesn't get that interception, because just from a field position, a time standpoint,
momentum, so much.
Yeah, but even if you get the stop there, I just don't know that there's enough time for the Broncos to come back from the deficit at that point. I think still trailing by 10 or 11 at that point. And so that was critical. And it spoke to something that we said at the, after the Colts game, after the Chargers game. Hey, when you're in your biggest moments here, can this defense find a way to make that big play? And they did it against the Jets, right? And they did it against the Eagles. And it was, the Giants did go down and score at the end of this game, but the defense did have a couple of stops that were important. They had that interception. And that final drive.
And they almost picked it off. I believe it was Hufanga and Brandon Jones that just collided, were able to pull that down. But they were playing so intense out there. Like they were like heat-seeking missiles. Like they were trying to find that moment to switch the game.
Yeah, and so whether it's the turnover or you get a 3-and-out to get the ball back for the go-ahead touchdown, that last drive is hard for me to criticize them for, because a couple of penalties on that drive, I just don't. Yeah. I don't necessarily agree with them being penalties, and so it's hard to say, hey, that was that's on the defense.
Yeah,
you just got to live with some of those. But
imperfect game.
Yeah, that's right.
They've said that before.
But in big moments, the defense came up big. And then the other thing we said was, hey, against the Colts, right, and really maybe less so against the Colts, more against the Chargers, in those games and in playoff games when you get to them, hopefully, you need your quarterback to play big in the biggest moments. And I think we saw in L.A., the Broncos have a chance late in that game. Score is tied. They can't get anything going. That throw to Courtland Sutton is just over his outstretched fingertips. Yeah. And then Herbert gets the ball back, leads the Chargers down the field. They score. They win the game. And I think I said on the podcast, at some point to take the next step and beat those big teams or win those big games, your quarterback has to – it comes down to those moments where can your quarterback deliver? And it's overly simplistic in some ways, and there's a lot that goes into it, from the protection and the receivers making plays and the play calling and all that. But ultimately, can your quarterback make a play? And we've seen over the last several weeks, Bo Nix just turn into this killer in the fourth quarter. And I've always said this about him, that one thing I've really respected about his game is even when things don't start strong, he finds a way to finish. And I talked about that Raiders game last year. I talked about that Colts game last year. Yeah. Certainly this Jets game, the Eagles game, and this game now. And you mentioned that stat of what the Broncos have done in the fourth quarter, coming back from deficits of 14-plus points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. They, like I said, Bo Nix, 3 fourth-quarter comebacks in the last 3 weeks. This is what you need from your quarterback. This is what a franchise QB does. And the Up and Adams show, Kay, a friend of the program, she put out a little stat that first 3 quarters, Bo has 8 touchdowns, 3 picks, 60% completion percentage, 81.5 passer rating, and the team is averaging 13 points per game across those first 3 quarters. Then you go to the fourth quarter where the Broncos have outscored opponents 61-13. Oof. 61-13 over just the last 4 weeks alone. And Bo Nix this season, 6 touchdowns, 1 pick in the fourth quarter, 68 completion percentage, so jumps up about 8 points. 104 passer rating, jumps up about 20 points, 25 points, and they're averaging 10 points alone just in the fourth quarter. So Bo Nix is coming alive in the biggest moments. He became the first player in NFL history with 2 touchdown passes and 2 touchdown runs in the fourth quarter of a game. Only the second player in Broncos history to do that over the course of a game. It's not always pretty. It's not always perfect, especially early. But this guy finds a way to battle. And then, you hear so much of, like on Twitter, and for whatever reason on Twitter, he's like this very polarizing quarterback. But you watch the throw.
Yeah.
I know, exactly. You watch the throw on, I'm pulling up the game book here.
Pull it up on your Microsoft Surface.
That's right. It's third and, where is that one? It's third and 11 with 2:14 to go. You're down 3. You got a chance to take the lead. He delivers an absolutely perfect throw to Marvin Mims down the right sideline. Then he delivers a strike, Evan Ingram makes a play. But on the next drive that they have, again, 30 seconds left, no timeouts. We talk all the time about Sean Payton saying situational football, what favors the offense, what favors the defense. This one really favors the defense. If you get tackled in bounds short, or you take a sack, or you even if you have a drop, any of those things probably end your chances. And instead, he drives one to Marvin Mims in the middle of the field. Then he finds Cortland Sutton for a play that was installed on Saturday. And then the presence of mind to get up there and spike the ball quickly with 2 seconds left. And then Will Lutz drills it. So that's what you need from your quarterback. Yeah. And if Bo Nix plays quarterback like that, especially in the fourth quarter, this team's going to be in a lot of games. And, man, it was – I don't know how you watch that and are not impressed by what Bo Nix can do.
We've heard the guys talk about how Bo Nix is unfazed, how he's cool, calm, and collected, how these high-pressure moments, he remains solid. Watching this game, I always knew what they were talking about, but it's different, like, hearing them talk about it and truly seeing it in real time. Like, obviously, he's been in different games and where stuff didn't go his way, but at no point did I feel that Bo Nix was panicked at all. Even though he's like running and like making like we have to get it, but he didn't look panicked. He just looked like, I'm commanding my offense so that they know what we're doing. And, like you mentioned, like for him to go and spike the ball and stop time, and just his receivers to know not do anything extra, just get down, get up, get back in formation. And the crowd really played into it. And again, that Will Lutz field goal was huge. I mean, we're watching from the press box, and the entire stadium is tense. Marvin Mims said after the game, he was like, this game was tense. We were tense. The fans were tense. Like, it was one of those games where you talk about mental toughness. This is what that mental toughness is used for. Because as you mentioned, it's very simplistic to say we have to be mentally tough. We have to be physically tough. But like, this is what that means, to have the mindset of, we're not out of this. And Marvin even mentioned, he's like, even when they scored and they gave us 33 seconds, I was like, well, that's a lot of time. Like, it's, you have to have that. And that's where that mental toughness comes from. Because as you mentioned, we've seen other teams, especially this past week, that a lot of times on the clock and they'll knee it, or a lot of times on the clock and they'll just kind of, hey, we're already down by a lot. Let's take our start. They'll kind of give in. And you look at the fourth quarter, you're down 19-0. Nothing's really going your way. That mental toughness to stick through it and come out with a victory on top is something that I think is truly going to be a testament to the identity of this team, the culture of this team, and showing, like, we've been talking about the last few months, the pieces coming together. This is what it looks like when the pieces come together. Now I know the focus is to just make sure it happens in all 4 quarters.
Yeah, and you've changed the identity of this team late in games. Last year, 1-6 in one-score games, and Sean Payton has called it the Achilles heel of this team a year ago. They're 4-2 right now in one-score games and have won 3 in a row. And, again, maybe you don't want to be in all these one-score games because it invites some of this randomness to come in at the end. And there were a number of plays after going back and watching it where, and I said this last night, like, it's not like the Broncos were perfect in the fourth quarter, because you have the dropped interception, you have the penalties, on defense that allow that last-minute touchdown drive. Even after you cut it to 19-8, you allow another touchdown. So it's not like it was perfection in the fourth quarter, but there were also plays where if they had gone the other way, maybe it's a different scenario, and it's like Brandon Jones makes a tackle on a 2-point conversion right at the goal line to save 2 points. And because the Giants, for some reason, are chasing points there. And ultimately, if they get that, then you might need a touchdown in the final minutes. Yeah. Or they miss an extra point at the end and miss 2 on the day. Yeah. If they don't miss that extra point, then that field goal is for the tie. And then who knows what happens in overtime. Bo Nix on, I believe it was the second touchdown of the fourth quarter. Before they score, he has a play where the Giants defender tips it up in the air and almost picks it off, and it might have been a pick six going the other way. And it's like, if any of those things go in the other direction, this might not happen. But credit to the Broncos for surviving those things, for making their plays, finding a way to get a win. And again, I think they've changed the identity, which is in one-score games now. I think this team knows it can do what it takes to pull out the win.
Yeah, when you look at just the entirety of what this offense is able to do, J.K. Dobbins spoke after the game, and they asked him, like, oh, like, how happy with this win? And he's like, I am happy. He's like, but I don't want to be in this situation because we're going to play other teams that they're going to try to rack up points on us while we're not able to put things, together, right? Like, they're going to take advantage of that by just blowing us out. We have to prevent that by trying to string wins together and trying to string drives together and showing that we can be a full-fledged team. And that's what, I believe head coach Champagne talked about, of just the focus of the first 3 quarters and making sure that we're balanced in those ways. Because, the Broncos were 4 for 13 on third down. They ended up finishing with 25 first downs, but I believe they only had a few going into the fourth quarter. I don't have the exact number on that. I know you probably do because you're our stats guy. But just looking at the Broncos' possessions, it was a punt, turnover on downs, the end of the half. Then it was a punt, and then something just clicked, and they scored on every possession, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast. And as you mentioned, the interception was huge. I thought the sack that Sternad also had on the Giants was huge, and just like that presence, right? And certain pieces are starting to come back. They're trying to figure that out. Dre Greenlaw had his first game back with the team. He talked to the media after the game and mentioned that he felt like he had a little bit dear legs trying to get things, but he was on a 20-play count, if I'm not mistaken, and he mentioned like the importance of finding his role there. And Justin Sternad talked about it too, like, we're just trying to win. Like, whoever is the best piece for that to happen is going to make that possible. But as you look at Dre Greenlaw's performance from yesterday and just how the defense overall kind of meshed and rallied at the end to hold off the Giants, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think with Greenlaw in particular, just you notice the energy, you notice the violence he plays with. He leveled Jackson Dart on one play. He got up talking to several guys after plays. He brings a certain level of energy to this defense, and it'll be nice to see him continue to get more and more snaps, I imagine, as he gets back to kind of like football shape, if you will. Mm-hmm. But he played, I think, 27% of the snaps. And he had 6 tackles, which was tied for second on the team. Wow. Brandon Jones also had 6. Alex Singleton had 8. They played about 50 more snaps than Greenlaw. And so that speaks to just kind of the impact that Greenlaw made in such a short time. He was in on every play. And again, I think it's the physicality, the intensity he plays with. I think Malcolm Roach said, like, you got to watch out when he's coming in to tackle somebody because he'll go right through you to get to that guy, and he wants to beat you to the ball. But they need those first responder type players. Talanoa Hufanga is one of those guys. Greenlaw's another one. So it was exciting to see him out there. And obviously defensively, it wasn't their best performance. There were some coverage breakdowns. The tight ends for New York obviously found some advantages there. And Sean Payton he was asked about, hey, how do you improve? And I think that's kind of the big thing moving forward is how do you find a way to – you can't come back from 19 points down in the fourth quarter every week. It's just not it's not feasible. Yeah. And one of the things that Sean Payton mentioned was 5 or 6 third downs that were 3rd and 10 or 4th and 10, 4th and long, and you give them up. You give up conversions. And certainly there are a couple that stand out. There was a 3rd and 17 that led to a touchdown for the Giants as Dart's pass was kind of batted up in the air and then caught and run for a touchdown. And then there was the 4th and 19 where you give up a completion right at the sticks. Not sure if it would have been a first down, but then you've got the penalty on JFM. So you got to find a way to clean those things up. And when you've got a chance to put those teams away and finish, get off the field, it's important to do that. But then I think offensively, Sean Payton, some of the things he mentioned, mental errors, mistakes, the snaps, there were some high snaps, wrong reads, and he said, quote, you name it, that there were issues. So I think that is and he mentioned last night after the game, you've got to find a way to emotionally respond after this game, and that the record of teams after you steal one like this is not very good the next week. Hopefully the Broncos turn the page quickly and say, hey, we've got a lot to work on and really kind of hone in on that, because it's going to be a tough test with Dallas coming in on Sunday.
Yeah, Dallas, dropped a good amount of points on Sunday against the Commanders. And I think that's what JK kind of alluded to, not that game specifically, but just the fact that you are going to play teams that are able to score early or score fast, and you're going to have to match that tempo sometimes. One thing that I liked that the defense said was, and it was something that was asked about the defense, I believe, in London, but the defense said, look, there's going to be some games where the offense is going to have to pick us up. It's going to be some game where the defense is going to have to pick us up. Like, it's complementary football. And this was one of those games. Jonathan Cooper mentioned after the game, like, the offense, like, credit to them, like, they were able to really pick us up in that fourth quarter, and we were able to do enough to, sustain it and keep the win. But that's what happens. Like, your offense and your defense need to play hand in hand. And I think now it's just a test of, like, that happening, at the same time, and them having sustaining drives and forcing 3 and outs. And as you mentioned, putting teams away early when you can. But when you look at the big picture of this win and the AFC, I mean, the Chargers took a loss yesterday. The Raiders took a loss yesterday. They were playing the Chiefs in that one. So obviously the Chiefs got the win. But they now lead in the AFC West. And I know that for this Broncos team, they had mentioned it. It all starts there. It all starts with the division. That's how you begin building where you want to go.
Yeah, and it's only week 7. There's a long way to go. But I also think, I don't know the last time that the Broncos were in the solo lead in the division through week 7. You might have to go all the way back to, it's possible in 2016 that they did, but I think I remember properly, the Raiders started off 6-0 or something like that. So it might be 2015. It might be, I'd have to look. It's been a while. It probably was 2015. But it's been a while since this team has been in this position late in the season. And so, if you're a Broncos fan, I think it's okay to get excited about, hey, it's week 7, we're first place in the division, because you outlined that goal very clearly. Mm-hmm. And early in the season, you suffered a couple of tough losses to the Chargers where it seemed like, man, we're 3 games back of the Chargers essentially. And hey, is the division out of reach already? And it just goes to show you how quickly things change in the NFL. Because 4 weeks ago, the Broncos were 1-2, the Chargers were 3-0, and they had that game in the division plus the tie break. And now you look up 4 weeks later, and the Broncos are 5-2, the Chargers are 4-3 with the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Raiders obviously struggling and not kind of on pace right now in the division, but I think it does mean something. And this also feels to me like a part of the schedule where you've got to get some wins because you're at home, and it's teams, maybe the Cowboys notwithstanding, there's a couple of teams that are, Cowboys got to 500, they're 3-3-1, but otherwise teams that are below 500 in the Texans and the Raiders, and find a way to kind of stay on pace here, because it feels like a division race that's going to be tight all the way to the end. Yeah. Every single win is going to matter. And we talked about, the Jets last week of, hey, in December, nobody really is going to care how you won that game. It just matters that you won that game. And I think it goes the same thing with the Giants win, is that, we would have been talking about if you don't get that field goal, or if Will Lutz misses that field goal, or Marvin Mims doesn't catch that ball. Hey, great fight from the Broncos. Like, they really showed resilience. But at the end of the day, you'd still have a loss, and you'd still be 4-3, and you've let the Chiefs kind of come back to first place in the division despite their tough start. Yeah. And instead, you're not looking at that at all, and you are 5-2, and you are currently the 3 seed in the AFC, and keeping pace with, Indy only has 1 loss, but otherwise, you've got the second best record in the conference. Yeah. And so all those things matter, and you got to keep doing it, right? Like, it's not over by any means. You still got more than half the season to go, but to find a way to win these games and keep pace in the AFC West, I think that the division is still very much alive and possible, but you got to keep winning, and you don't want to look too far ahead. And we talked about this last week, I think, but think about in a few weeks what that game against Kansas City could mean if you can find a way to win most of these games over the next 3 weeks. This is a critical 3-week stretch where if you can find a way to get
all the home games, very, you know,
or find a way to win even a couple of them and just get to that Kansas City game with a chance to like that could very well be for the lead in the division. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. But this is real. This is not like at this point it's after week 2 and you're leading the division, or it's week 4. We still got a long way to go, but we're getting close to like the halfway point, and so I think it does mean something that the Broncos are 5-2 and at the top of the division.
I agree with you. And Garrett Bowles mentioned that during his media scrum after the game. I was saying, like, we're real. Like this is the team that we're putting out there, and we're here, and we're 2 plays away from being undefeated at this point. And obviously we can't change those things, but we learn from those things, and we're showing you how we learn those things by rallying, closing out games. We're never out. We're going to continue to battle back, and we're a tough team. And as you look into this next stretch, you have the Cowboys. Then I believe they travel to Houston to take on the Texans. And then they return home for 2 more games. I believe the Chiefs are the game right before the bye week. I forget who is right before the Chiefs. The Raiders. So you have 2 AFC West matchups at home before you enter that bye week. And Marvin Mims was also asked, hey, like, did you feel tired because of the jet lag? He was like, actually, I felt pretty good out there. And this team is just continuing to push through, whether it's the time change, things like that. They don't make excuses. They're very well aware of what they're putting out on the field, and the room to get better is always there. But, this Cowboys game is going to be really interesting because Dak Prescott, is a whole other threat. And we'll break that down more on Thursday's Altitude Advantage episode, really previewing that Cowboys matchup. But, I mean, how do you see them? You don't really want to say flush it, because they did enjoy that win, and I know it feels good, especially on a game like yesterday, honoring DT, honoring Super Bowl 50 team. Jonathan Cooper mentioned after the game, like, that is not a team you want to lose in front of. Like, that is not the team that you want to play and come out with a loss. Like, you want to make sure that you're able to win for that. So I thought that was really, really good that they were aware of just the emotional ties to that game. But how do you see this team turning the page on that for this Cowboys matchup? Not necessarily on the X's and O's part, but just from understanding, like, this is another week of work. It's a lot to address, and week 8 is right around the corner.
I think it's when you've got the coach to kind of get you ready and explain that, hey, we won this game, and be excited about the win and understand. I think you do learn something about yourself that you're able to come back and win a game like that. But at the same time, you've got to know that it's not good enough to beat a lot of teams in this league, or consistently beat a lot of teams in this league. I don't want to take away from the Giants, because I think Jackson Dart, Cam Scatabo, like, those guys played well, and I was impressed. That's a good defensive front. Bo Nix, I think just a couple of sacks, but like, they pressured him a lot, and they made plays defensively as well. So that's a Giants team that I think is playing with a lot of confidence right now, and certainly you saw that in the first half, really through the third quarter, until everything changed quickly.
Malcolm Roach said they tried to make a statement. He was like, they kind of did make a statement. So the credit was definitely given to Jackson Dart and Scatabo.
But I think that you learn something about yourself, and you know that, hey, if we're in this situation again, we're not out of it. I think that's powerful to have. If we fall behind 10-0 to somebody, if we fall behind, if we're trailing by 14 points in the fourth quarter, you don't want to be in that situation, but just the reality of the NFL is that you are sometimes going to be in that situation. And there's some teams that are not built to come back from that. And I think that the Broncos have shown the last couple of weeks that they are built to come back from that. They can get timely defensive stops. Bo Nix has come alive in the fourth quarter when he's pushed the ball down the field. And that's powerful, is it, in the playoffs, if you get to that point, like, you trail early and need that mental fortitude. I think that's important. But at the same time, I think, one, your coach is going to make sure that that a lot of things got to be a lot better. And then the other thing is, I think when you welcome an opponent like the Dallas Cowboys that just scored 44 points, they won by 22. It's not a team you're going to overlook. And so I think
big plays too. I think Dak had like a 76-yard pass to CeeDee Lamb. Like, it's explosive.
So this is going to be a game that you got to be ready for. You're going to be in the throwbacks.
You just posted about that.
Yeah, and just be ready to go. Be, you escaped with one, and it's a great win, the best thing about winning is that it sets you up to win the next one and go from 5-2 to 6-2. And so I think that the focus will be there. And I think especially the offensive guys, they know that they came alive, but that it wasn't good enough. And I think they'll find a way to bounce back.
Well, you snuck in a little Easter egg right there. Just casually, it'll be the throwbacks. You know, how excited are you for the throwbacks?
Good. They're 2-0, so let's make it 3-0. That's the main thing. No, they look awesome. And I've long been of the opinion that it's better that they don't wear them all that much. I think if you wear them, and we announced
it
that.
loses its magic touch.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to wear them 3 games this year. Cowboys, Raiders, and Chargers all at home. But yeah, if you wore them every week, and I know that people talk about them as the best uniform in the NFL, I agree. But if you wore them every week, I think you just get used to it. And so now it's like, ooh, the throwbacks are here. And so that'll be fun to see on Sunday, and hopefully can get a big win.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this game. I'm always a big fan of the throwbacks. I'm always a big fan of just how everything gets thrown back, from the graphics that we use to the everything. Like I love really transforming into that era. And obviously last year when the Raiders played the Broncos and the throwbacks, that was almost a turning point. Did you feel like this game was another turning point for this team?
Maybe. I mean, we'll kind of have to see how it all plays out, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think in retrospect, it's easy to point to that Raiders game or the Jets.
Oh yeah, hindsight's definitely 2020.
But I do think that this stretch in general of like comeback win at Philly, comeback win against the Jets, comeback win against the Giants. If you don't get those, you're possibly talking about, hey, a 2-5 start, and now you're in a really tough spot. And so, if you do end up winning the division, or you do end up getting a high wild card seed, and you do something in the playoffs, say that a few weeks from now the offense really starts rolling, and you're playing like you did in the fourth quarter the whole game, and you're looking like we know this offense can look like it looked in the first quarter against the Jets, like it looked in the fourth quarter against the Eagles. If you get to that point and you start playing high level football for 4 quarters and you're winning these games, I think then you'll look back to this stretch and say, man, it really was important that even when we weren't quite playing our best, we found a way to win. And it's hard for teams to play at that elite level for 4 or 5 months in a row. You often see teams hit their strides at different points or have that hot stretch. Last year, Philly got it and rode it to a Super Bowl. So it just depends when you get it. But it is important until you get it that you don't just drop a bunch of games. And that's kind of the difference between like where Kansas City is right now and where Baltimore is. And I know that Baltimore's had a lot of injuries, but Kansas City's still 4-3 despite having a tough start to the season, where the Ravens, I believe, are 1-5. So those are kind of important wins here for the Broncos that I think in a few weeks, like if the Broncos, we're looking way out now, but like say the Broncos,
let's go down the rabbit hole,
beat the Chiefs at home in week 10 or week 11 or whatever it is, and take the division lead into the bye, you're going to look back and say, well, that was only possible because they found a way to get it done against the Jets, because they found a way to get it done against the Eagles, against the Giants. And that's when I think the significance of those wins will really stand out.
Well, I asked you this in the instant analysis yesterday, but I mean, yesterday's win was awesome for me in multiple ways. I mean, obviously, I grew up a Broncos fan. I was a big DT fan. And I posted on Twitter a picture of me like sticking out of the Super Bowl 50 sign at the Capitol when we were celebrating the Super Bowl. And so it was really special for me to just come back, celebrate the Super Bowl 50 team, get such a special win. It was my birthday, so I was very happy that I was able to celebrate and work late on a win on Dub Day. And I did ask you this, now that you had a chance to really look back, you've covered a lot of teams, you've covered a lot of games, especially here with the Broncos. Where does this one rank for you? Because I know like yesterday you said it ranked up there, but I know you had some time to think about it.
Yeah, I still think it's like right toward the very top of the list. And it's really like, it's more of the quarter, like in terms of a full game, I don't know that it's number one, but in terms of like maybe singular quarter, maybe we'll call it that. Like I still think back to, and maybe it was the atmosphere, but that Monday night win in Buffalo a couple of years ago was just absolutely terrific. And I think that was kind of, I know there's a new quarterback now for the Broncos, but that was kind of like, hey, this is the early signature win that this team can compete with the top tier of the AFC.
Yeah.
The Eagles win a couple weeks ago was really great as well. Like that sent a message, I think, about what this team could do. And so this one was, I think, from a resilience standpoint, it's up there with like the Broncos. I believe it was a 21-point comeback against the Chargers in 2020, 31-30. KJ Hamler catches a touchdown at the end of the game.
Those of you guys listening, that's all in his head. There's no notes.
Well, I mean,
that's just all in his head.
It was a big game. Like that stands out. I'm sure I'm missing some, but there's games where you blow people out, and it's like the Lions game a few years ago, the first game after DT's passing. Like that's special just because of the Broncos showed up and dominated. And then there's other ones where it's like, hey, the first time they beat the Chiefs since I've been here, that was a big one. But they take on their own kind of like personalities, and this one was purely a fourth quarter comeback. And so from that standpoint, it was tied for the largest fourth quarter comeback in franchise history. I think you got to put it at the top of at least that list.
Well, and we're a part of it, and we look ahead to many more. Well, Broncos country, we appreciate you listening.
I need a break. I can't do another 14-point fourth quarter comeback. Yeah. I mean, if they're down 14, I'll take it, but I'd like to maybe not have to do that.
Can I just say, since you just ruined my outro, can I just say that, Aric, you brought me some voodoo donuts yesterday, which I was very appreciative. They were very delicious. And I don't know what I was doing. It's only weird if it doesn't work, but I was trying to get whatever voodoo donut specialty on the field too. So it was one of those games that it just reminds you why you love football. It reminds you why you love the game. It reminds you why you put these long hours, why we do this, why we cover this sport. And Evan Ingram spoke about that too. Like, these are the games that you play. Like, these are the memories you play for. Like, these are the moments you play for. Like, when it's all said and done, you look back on your career, and that's what you stand by. And I think we got a good dose of that with, having the Super Bowl 50 team come and the guys come, and some Super Bowl 50 team players talked to the media of just like what the moment means to them. And it's been 10 years since the last Super Bowl. And they all say it was something special, And we can't predict the future, but there definitely is something special here. Agree?
Agreed.
All right, now I can do my outro. All right, Broncos country, we appreciate you listening to another episode of Altitude Advantage. Our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla, needs a break, so we will be heading out. We appreciate you guys listening to another episode. Make sure you guys stay tuned on DenverBroncos.com and on YouTube. I'm your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. If you missed anything from locker room sound, inside the locker room, our one-on-one with Marvin Mims, or including our instant analysis after the game, make sure you guys check it out. It is all there for you guys to enjoy, and we will see you on this week's episode on Thursday.